Hey everybody, it's Josh here again. So today's video, I'm going to talk about my experience working an IT job in Japan on a small military base. I'm going to cover like the whole process of like how I found the job, my interview and stuff with the recruiter, like my communications up until moving, the security clearance process, and then my experience actually moving to Japan and getting acclimated. It's not really a story with like a happy ending. It wasn't really a good time, so just be prepared for that, I guess. So if you're interested in working in IT or defense contracting work or working in Japan or working overseas, go ahead and smash the like button because this video might be interesting for you. So just a little backstory, going back to 2016, I had already studied Japanese for about a decade or so up to this point and visited Japan like maybe 4 or 5 times. So I was really interested in Japan. I liked the food and the environment and stuff, and I was really interested in trying to work there. There's a whole bunch of different avenues you can take if you want to work in Japan. Like you can do what's called the JET program, where you go and teach English. You can go independently and work in a eikaiwa. It's like an English conversation school. You can join the military and get lucky enough to be stationed in Japan, which I wouldn't really recommend doing. And then there's also defense contractor work, which is you go to Japan as a civilian and then you work on a military base somewhere, essentially. I considered doing JET and teaching English, but the salary was like pretty low that I kind of shied away from it. And I even thought about joining the military to like be like, oh, I hope I can go to Japan. But I rightfully kind of realized that wasn't the best idea. So I decided to try to do defense contracting work. But the problem with that is to work on a military base in Japan doing IT, you need a security clearance. And it's really hard to get a security clearance if you haven't been in the military before. A security clearance is essentially a status that you can obtain that will let you work in certain government environments that deal with classified information. There's several different levels of security clearance. So it's like a secret, top secret with like a single scope background investigation, and then top secret with poly and probably some other ones. Anyway, this will be important later, but it's hard to get a security clearance without you already being in the military. So one day I was just sitting around looking at different IT jobs in Japan, like on different military bases, like defense contractor jobs. And I just happened to find one that was in Camp Fuji, and of course it required a security clearance, but I was like screw it, let me just apply to this anyway. So in defense contracting and defense work, the military kind of has these categories that they use for jobs, like this IAT level 1, 2, and 3 thing. It stands for Information Assurance Technician. There's like a couple other different categories, and you can get certain certifications that let you apply and be eligible for jobs at these certain levels. So if you have CISSP, for instance, it makes you eligible for like IAT and IIM all the way up through level 3. So when I applied, I was like, I have CISSP and like CCNA, and I'm eligible for all of this. So I kind of was hoping that would lean things in my favor, just to give you a little bit of context of what we're looking at here. And surprisingly enough, since this never happens when I apply for like defense contracting work, they responded to me like the very next day, and they're like, are you in the process of moving to Japan? And actually I kind of was at this point. I kind of gave up on working, and I was just going to go to a language school in Kyoto to kind of try to improve my Japanese ability. But if I could find a job and a security clearance, I was like all about that. So I was pretty excited about this. As you can see from the recruiter's job description, the job was like actually quite bad on paper. Like remember, like at this point I was working a government job already, and my salary was like 75K or so, and I had like full government benefits and pension and all this like comfy stuff going on. But I really wanted to go to Japan, so I ended up being okay with sacrificing like 25K of my salary and like giving up all my benefits just so I could like hopefully get a clearance and hopefully kind of have a chance to move out to Japan. So it's pretty hard to get a clearance and move out there. They seem pretty interested at this point, so I was getting pretty worried because I didn't have a clearance, and it's hard to get, and I thought they were going to be like, oh, you don't have one, like get out of here. So I was like, if you hire me, like I'll fund my clearance for you, because as I understand, like this job just needed a secret clearance, which is it's kind of low, and I tried to like look up how much it costs to process, and it was like 5K or something. I don't know how accurate that is, but I was like, I'll pay for it. But surprisingly enough, the recruiter still wanted to have an interview with me like that day. So I was like, oh my God, like it's happening. We ended up having a phone call that evening, and it went really well. I guess that was my interview. It was really non-technical, and it was really informal. She just kind of asked me questions like why Japan, like what I'm doing and my certs, my background and stuff. But it was not technical at all. And it seemed to go really well. And then the next day they just hired me essentially, and they gave me an offer letter. So you can see kind of what the offer letter looks like here. And by the way, also my resume at the time, I'll put a link to my resume in the description, but this is kind of what it looks like. When you're applying for a defense position, your resume has to be like as verbose as possible. Usually, I don't usually like making my resume like this, but because this was like defense contracting, I kind of made a little bit different resume. But this might be like kind of interesting to look at to see like, I guess, where I was in my career at this point in time. After getting the hire letter, there was a massive amount of paperwork that I had to, like a lot of the normal new hire paperwork. And then when you get a clearance, you have to fill out what's called a SF-86. If you've been in the military, you probably have filled this out at some point, but it's this massive thing that like talks about your background and like where you've lived in the last 10 years and like all your contacts or like your foreign contacts. Like do you have like friends that are like Chinese or whatever, or like Japanese or like outside the country or something. You have to fill out like all this like crazy stuff. And it took forever, but like I totally didn't care because I was like, yeah, I'm going to Japan. So about a month has gone by at this point, and it takes some time for the clearance to process. You can get an interim clearance, like it means like kind of like a pre-approval, and once you have that, you can go and start working. But I had to wait like quite a while for my interim clearance to come. So I was kind of researching housing at this point, trying to figure out like where I was going to live and like how I would get housing as a foreigner, because you can't just roll in there and rent an apartment as an American. So I kind of asked the recruiter, I was like, is there anything set up for SOFA status? SOFA is like status of forces agreement. It's like you go there with like kind of military orders for the purpose of working on base. So I was like, is there any kind of housing set up for people with my status? And she was like, yeah, essentially, yeah, there's SOFA status housing here. So I was pretty reassured by this. This is key, by the way. Like something really dumb happens with this later, but basically I was told there's housing for me there, and I believed it because I was like, well, there's a lot of military bases in Japan. There must be something nearby. But anyway. Fast forward another 2 months until July, my clearance finally got approved, at least pre-approved at the interim level. So she's like, the only thing left for you to do is the drug test. So I was like, all right, great. But at this point, I actually didn't hear anything about housing yet, like what I would do once I got to Japan, like how I would live essentially. So I asked her again, I'm like, did you hear anything about the housing yet? And then she was like, oh, by the way, housing will be off base. It's too small and they don't provide anything for contractors. By the way, this was like, how long has it been? Maybe like 3.5 or 3 months or so at this point, like right when I'm about to go, she's like, oh, there's no housing on base and like they don't have it for contractors. And by the way, like I don't think this recruiter was doing this on purpose. It's not like she's living on the base and she's like trying to like keep secrets from me or something. I think that she went and asked someone about it, and then the person just like told her, and then she relayed the information to me. She was really nice, and I can tell she's like doing her best. But anyway, this is another kind of key interesting thing. And then after reading that, I was like, well, is there anything that I can do or anything I should know? Because I need to know like ASAP so I can try to find a Japanese person to co-sign an apartment for me. Because I can't just go there and like, what am I going to do? Like live in a hotel on my like reduced salary? And she's essentially like, oh, because you're coming with military orders, like you don't have to have a co-signer. And I was like, well, okay. You know best. So I just kind of accepted that. She also said there was some temporary lodging on base, which there was, which I'll cover later. So that kind of like put me at ease. At least I would have somewhere to stay in the meantime while I kind of figured things out. So at this point, my interim clearance has been processed, but I don't actually have my orders yet. So orders are, you can just think about it essentially like a piece of paper that says I'm going to be working for the US government here. I'm going to be working on a military base. So when you fly to Japan and you go through like the whatever customs and immigration or whatever, you have to show them your passport, and then they have to give you some kind of visa. Like if you're just a tourist, they'll just like give you a 90-day visa. But if you're coming with military orders, you can just show this, your orders to them. And I'm not sure if they give you a stamp or not, but I didn't actually have my orders, and I was getting ready to buy my ticket. So I'm like, well, is it okay for me to buy my ticket now? Like I don't have my orders. Is that okay? And then she was like, oh yeah, just you better to buy it sooner than later. So they essentially like had me buy my ticket and come to Japan without having my orders yet. So I purchased my ticket in August 1st or 2nd. I can't remember when it was. August 2nd rolls around and I fly. All my stuff is like sold and gone. And I fly to Japan without my orders, by the way. I just had my normal civilian stuff and my passport. And I get to Japan and I get to customs and immigration. And then they were like, why are you coming to Japan? And I was like, to work on a military base, essentially. And they're like, oh, do you have your orders? And I was like, nope, don't have those. And then they kind of looked at me like what are you doing? And so they took me and they went into this room, that holding room or whatever, when you have problems with immigration. And the person that I was dealing with like didn't really speak English, and my Japanese is like not that good, but it was enough for us to kind of communicate and talk. And I just explained to them, like I was in there for a while, and I just explained to them that I was like a military contractor, and my company told me to come, and they didn't give me my orders yet, but I have my passport. And she saw my passport, like I've been to Japan like a bunch of times already. So like luckily enough, they just let me enter on a tourist visa, like a 90-day. They gave me like a 90-day stamp, and they just like let me enter the country with that, on the contingency that I go to like the embassy or whatever that is later and change it. So that was really insane to me that they had me go to Japan under the premise to work without having orders. Like looking back, that's insane now, but at the time I was just like, well, okay, you told me to do it, so I guess I will. But yeah, that was nuts, and I got lucky being able to enter. So I got out of immigration, and I met up with this Marine. He's like a junior enlisted Marine, and then I found this Marine sergeant who came to pick us up, because another guy was actually on the same flight as me, but I didn't realize that. I also met one of my Japanese friends met me at the airport because they were going to try to help me get a SIM card or like a mobile Wi-Fi or something, but for some reason I couldn't get one. So I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. You just came out here for nothing, but I got to see her, I guess. So anyway, I went with the Marine sergeant and then the private, and we just drove back to Camp Fuji, like back to the Marine base. It took about an hour or so to drive from Haneda Airport all the way to Camp Fuji. And then once I got there, I could check into this kind of hotel they had. I'm pretty sure it was like some kind of barracks or something before, because it was super bare bones and there was no AC. And by the way, like Japan in August when I went, it was really, really hot. Like when I got out of the airport, I was like, what's wrong with this place? It's like some kind of sauna or something, because I had never been to Japan in summer at this point. But anyway, I got checked into my hotel, and the fee was $42 a night, which for a hotel, it's pretty good, I suppose, but it's not good to pay that much every day when it's kind of crappy, because you can't just like live in there for $42 a night, because it'll eat like half my salary at that point almost. So a couple days go by, and I still don't have cell phone service, and I ended up just somehow calling T-Mobile with like their special like whatever 611 or whatever that number is, and I somehow got really crap reception in Japan. They gave me some weird roaming plan, so I finally had cell phone service. And then I was still kind of searching for apartments at that point, because I was like, how am I supposed to live? And I couldn't find anything. And after a couple days goes by, my first day of work started, and I finally I guess went to the office, and I met my immediate supervisor and kind of another supervisor of mine, and then like my coworkers, and I was like, oh, finally, like, can you guys tell me like how I can get an apartment here? And I remember like specifically like one of them laughed, and they basically said like I can't get an apartment without a Japanese person co-signing it for me, because my immediate supervisor, he's married to a Japanese woman. The other supervisor also married to a Japanese woman. One of my coworkers, he had a Japanese wife, and then the fourth, like kind of American contractor, he was able to get an apartment because the COs are the commanding officer's secretary, like co-signed an apartment for him. Like that's how hard it is to get an apartment in this particular area. And I'm like, oh my god, you guys tricked me. Like, not them, but like I feel like my contracting company, like either they didn't know or they like tricked me to coming out here, because I couldn't, there was like no infrastructure set up for me to live essentially. So in all of my off time, like before and after work, I was searching on like how I could live here essentially. Otherwise I'd have to stay in the hotel and pay like $42, 42 like every day. But eventually I came across something called Leo Palace. It's kind of like this, it's like a furnished apartment where foreigners or Japanese people, I guess, they can come and like prepay for their housing, and they can just kind of stay in there for a while. But in order to be able to get that, I had to set up my own like Japanese bank account, and then to set up a Japanese bank account, which is hard in and of itself, by the way, but in order to set up a bank account, I have to somehow get a Hanko, or this like, it's like a stamp or like a seal that Japanese people use to kind of sign their name when they're doing official paperwork. So to find a Hanko, I just kind of Googled around like what are some Hanko stores nearby to get my stamp, and then I found one like right next to the supermarket that everyone went to. So I went inside, and like bear in mind, we're in Gotemba, Japan. It's really, really like rural countryside Japan, and not a lot of people speak English there. So I have to use Japanese, or I have to like bring a Japanese person with me. So I went into the store, and then because I look like this, right? I'm kind of big, and I clearly am like a foreigner, and there's just like old Japanese couple in there. So I asked them like in my broken Japanese, I was like Ginko koza kaisetsu no tame Hanko tsukuritai no desu ga koko de dekiru? And they just looked at me and they were like so surprised because like why this guy is like in our store and like why is he speaking Japanese. But they're actually like really nice because they can, even though my Japanese is quite bad, they can understand what I'm trying to say. And I just kind of explained to them like what I need the stamp for, and I need to get a bank account, and I work near this other Japanese military base, and they understood. So they really helped me out. They gave me this like paperwork to fill out, and it was really hard for me to read, but they kind of like helped me through it. And then they asked me what I want to have like on my stamp, because normally it's just like your Japanese name with like Japanese characters. So I just used my last name, but I spelt it out like Madako, because my last name is Madakor, but the closest I could kind of make in Japanese is Madako, but that also means like common octopus or something like this. But they didn't even laugh. They just made it for me, and it was like $30 or something. And while they're making it, they gave me like a tea and like crackers and like these snacks, and they were like super nice. It was a very interesting experience. But I got my Hanko made that day, so that's cool. So the next thing to do on the list was open up a bank account so I can finally get my Leo Palace apartment. So I kind of Googled banks and asked people, and basically everyone told me to go to this bank called JA Bank. It's like 15 minutes or so from the base. So I took time off of work during lunch one day, and I just went to the bank. And again, like even going to the bank in America, I feel it's like kind of hard because you have to like have all this crap to like open up your account. So I was like, I'm boned like either way. I might as well just like try to go in and do it without being able to like really speak Japanese. So I just went into the bank, and of course like everyone like look at me because like, what is this guy doing in here? But I just kind of explained to them, and again in my poor Japanese, I said like, アメリカから引っ越しして、そして滝ヶ原自衛隊の隣米軍基地で勤めてて、でもアパートの借りるのために銀行口座してほしいのですが、ここでできる外国人なのに, like something like this. And I heard like a girl in the back was like, kawaii, because like they can understand. Oh, that means cute. They can understand what I'm saying. It's broken, but they can like understand what I'm saying. So they kind of like look at each other because like obviously I don't have like proper Japanese documentation. I had my military ID at this point, but I didn't have like, it's called like zairyu kado. I was like, zairyu kado nai no ni kaisetsu dekiru means like, even I don't have my residence card, can I make an account? And they were just confused for a while and like talking to each other. And then eventually they decided that like it was okay because I'm pretty much screwed like if I can't make one. So they let me do it, and they gave me this paperwork to fill out the bank, and I looked at it, and of course like I cannot read any of it because like too many bank words and stuff. So I just asked them like, can I take this home and just fill it out at home and then bring it back later? And they were like, yeah. So I was like, all right, cool. So I just took the paperwork home and worried about it later. So this next part is key, the filling out the paperwork part. So basically there was this Japanese civilian working near my office, kind of like in the same building, and we would chat to each other sometimes in Japanese and English, but we weren't loud or anything. She's really quiet, and I'm really mindful of my surroundings, like being like new on a military base, like not knowing what's going on. So I'm trying to like be like quiet and polite and stuff. So I asked her like if she'll help me to fill out my paperwork, and she said yes, and she totally did, and we filled it out like really quick. Maybe it was like 30 minutes or something like this, and so I could finally get an apartment at this point. So at the end of the day, this is important for later, at the end of the day, like I just was leaving, and I walked by her office, and I just said like I just thanked her. It was in Japanese totally. I said something like 入力してくれて本当にありがとうございます。お疲れ様です. Like, thank you for helping me fill out this. And then, like, I don't know how to say お疲れ様 in English, but I spoke to her in Japanese, but there was like her desk was in the corner, and then across from her was like senior enlisted, like gunnery sergeant, like a American Marine, like senior enlisted. And I didn't really I'm just a dumbass civilian. Like, I don't know. I was just saying thanks for like saving my life to the girl, and in Japanese, in her like native language. But I'm pretty sure that dude, the gunnery sergeant, like didn't know what I was saying, and I didn't care at the time. I was just like thanks, and I just bounced. So this is key for later. So anyway, the next day I take my nice paperwork and I go to the bank and I open an account and I put my American money in it somehow. I forget how I did that. I must have exchanged it somewhere. And then now that I have my account, I ended up being able to rent out the Leo Palace, essentially the apartment. And that was interesting. I won't get into it too much, but at one point my water got like turned off at night because for whatever reason I didn't like switch it to my name or something. That was really difficult, but eventually that all got straightened out and I was finally living in an apartment. And this took 3 weeks, by the way. I was living in that hotel for 3 weeks, paying like $42 every day. So this is where things start to get more interesting. So like a couple more days goes by, and my immediate supervisor, he's really nice, by the way. He came up to me and he's like, "Hey Josh, I'm so sorry, but I have to move you to like building 50, which is like it's like a half a mile away from the communications office. It's like quite a walk from where my current office is." And I was like, all right, but why? Because the room that I was supposed to be moving to, it was like the literal server room. Like my desk was here, and like the wall behind me, just pretend that's like a server rack. So that's the room I was living in, or I was supposed to move into. And then my desk was like, it was metal, it was like rusting, and we're supposed to be wearing business casual. So I thought it was like really odd that I was being moved into there. So I was like, why? And he said essentially that that girl that helped me with my paperwork, the gunnery sergeant, like his desk was in front of her. That guy said that I was like being inappropriate with that girl on the base, like being loud or something, and then like going around the base with her, like doing I can't remember what he said, but we were like not fraternizing, but some word like this, that I was essentially just like being like inappropriate with her or something. Totally not true, by the way. I was so shocked when I heard this. I've never really felt like at that time, I've never really felt like that in my life up to that point, because I was just from my perspective, I was just like having a bad time already, and I was trying to do my best to kind of like fit in and assimilate and like do what I can to like make things like not suck. But this guy just comes in for no reason, just like tries to like make it shittier for me, and for no purpose. I almost cried because I was like so like at the time it was freaking bonkers. So I ended up getting all my stuff out of the office, and I just like moved it down to building 50, like all kind of far away from like everybody. And it was like quiet, I guess, which is cool. I mean, and the hilarious thing is like eventually like that poor girl that I got accused of being inappropriate with her, I forget what he said. Like I don't know, he thought I was like hanging out with her too much or something. Like the Marines like would bother her a lot because she like is a woman, I guess that's why, on the Marine base. Sorry if that offends like anyone, but they bothered her like too much, and then she got moved into the building like where I already was, and then eventually like one other contractor like got moved into there for some reason. So maybe they weren't discriminating against me, maybe they're just being stupid. I guess I have no idea. I guess I'll never find that out, but that was interesting. So eventually after a few weeks, like almost all the contractors and that poor girl got moved into that building. And by this time, maybe like 4 or 5 weeks or so had gone by, and I still haven't done any actual work, because even though I have my interim clearance and I'm sitting there and I have my CAC, it's like common access card, it's like your military ID, and I can log into the computer, I still can't actually like I can't log into any Cisco routers or any actual infrastructure or do anything like this, because I'm still waiting for access for that. And then come to find out, for my position, I actually need like a higher level of clearance. They sponsored me for a secret clearance, and I had an interim secret at the time, but actually for that position, I need like top secret with SSBI, which is like single scope background investigation. And that takes like quite a while to process, like a year or more at the time. That was when OPM just got hacked. So I was gonna have to wait like another year or something to even be able to work at this point. And one of the main reasons, like I kind of quit my other job, of course I wanted to go to Japan, but I it had already gotten monotonous. Like I really wanted to do like something new and like do some new work and do some networking and like do the whole Cisco thing. And I was like, oh, finally I can work. And then they're like, surprise, like you can't do anything for another year because you need this other clearance. So I just was, I got like pretty fed up at that point with like the whole apartment thing, and then the weird behavior of the senior enlisted Marines and being moved into that building. And then my contracting company, like, again, I don't think it was the recruiter's like intent. I don't think she actually knew like what was happening. But anyway, my contracting agency like really gave me like a hard time like when I moved to Japan. So I was just getting fed up at this point. So I asked my company, like not the recruiter, but did I ask the recruiter? I can't remember if it was the recruiter or like the, you know, a higher up person, like the manager or something. I asked them, because you guys were so negligent in this process, I've been screwed like so many times. Like you made me come here without orders, and like you unintentionally lied to me about housing, and I had to like do all this crazy stuff to even find an apartment. And I was like, you guys wasted my time. So I need you to increase my salary by like at least $5 an hour, or give me some kind of comp time, like some comp vacation or something like this, or do something for me. And then they were like, well, we'll give you another higher paying job, just get CCNP, and then we'll like give you another job. So I thought about it, but I eventually was just like, no, I don't think so. Like, can you just increase my pay or compensate me in some way for like these discretions? And they said no. And then I quit, like immediately. I quit. I gave my notice and I quit within like 3 days. Actually, it really sucked because it's hard to like go to Japan, and it's hard to get a clearance, and like all that stuff like kind of lined up, but so many like dumb things happened when I actually got to Japan, like the housing and the senior enlisted Marines like blow my freaking mind. Like, not only that guy, sorry if anyone is a Marine who's watching this, I'm not saying Marines are bad or something. I'm just saying like that environment was I guess I didn't fit in that environment would be the right word, because people weren't really mean to me. Like just that guy was, I guess. And then another senior enlisted Marine, like in the office, when I used to work in the office before I got kicked out for nothing, that guy was like really mean to the junior enlisted. I mean, that's probably par for the course for the military. I'm just like a dumb civilian again, and I'm not used to seeing that. But I was like, what are you guys doing here? What the heck? What is this environment? But anyway, it's not what I expected, and I don't really regret going, because I had a pretty good experience. I met a lot of, I mean, outside of the dumb stuff, I met a lot of like nice people. My supervisors were nice. I met a lot of like Japanese friends, my existing Japanese friends I got to see because I was in Japan. It was an okay experience. And after I quit, I actually stayed in Japan for another year and just kind of hung out with my friends. And that nice girl who helped me fill out my bank paperwork who I got in trouble for, like we actually like went to another Japanese or another military base. We went to like Yokosuka Naval Base, and we got like Cinnabon and Popeyes and like all this American food, and it was a nice fun time. And there's a lot of nice people there. Some other good things about living in Japan, specifically the countryside, like people are super nice. Like the Japanese people are super nice there, especially if you make some like effort to speak Japanese. Like there's a lot of times when crazy stuff happened. Like I was in line at the grocery market, the grocery store, and there's like this old Japanese grandma behind me, and I was trying to like get change, and I needed like one more yen, or like one more cent. I didn't have it, and even though I look like this and I'm a foreigner, and who knows if I can speak Japanese, right? Like she gave me like 1 cent just randomly to pay for my groceries, and I feel that's never happened to me. Like even in America, that's never happened. And I had like all kinds of experiences like really similar to that, where people are just like really nice to me for no reason, like even though I look like this and I'm in countryside Japan. It's really crazy. So if you're thinking about going to Japan, I would recommend going to the countryside, because people are just so nice there. Oh, and I should also mention, before I actually quit, I prepared this whole document to give to my recruiter for if they tried to hire somebody else next time, they can just hand this over to them. So I pretty much documented out my whole experience for them, like all the stuff they didn't tell me, and I was pretty much screwed because of all of it. So I kind of compiled this big ass document for them. So just some like suggestions to the actual company, and stuff for the person to kind of do before before flying to Japan. Like, get your cell phone squared away first before coming, and then all this other stuff. Bring some cash. You know, don't get sick. Do what you can to not get sick. Kind of what happens when you arrive in Japan. I kind of explained, like, you guys sent me here without my SOFA status or without any of my orders or anything, and you can't come into the country like that. I kind of explained that a little bit. Also, by the way, this whole thing, when I went to the base and I got my status adjusted, I got a special stamp on my passport, but apparently I had to go somewhere else too, to like the consulate or embassy or something, to have the actual Japanese government change my status. But I didn't do that because I thought the dude on the base did it, which is stupid looking back. But I almost got banned from entering Japan for like whatever 10 years or something if I overstayed my visa. But luckily I caught it and I didn't get in trouble. But this just kind of explains like how to get to the base and like what bus stop to take, because I had such a hard time with like all of this stuff because no one told me. Commute to work, like what time the bus runs and all that good stuff, and how to actually like set up a bank account. And I think we can, it just links to the same document. I took a picture of all the paperwork for the bank, like how to fill it out, like assuming they go to this particular same bank, and all this stuff, and like where to stamp your Hanko, like the little stamp you get. I just kind of compiled this whole thing and just gave it to them so they can give it. Oh yeah, wire transfer. That's how I got money. But they can give it to the next person, who gets hired. This is my freaking poor Japanese. Oh my God, don't look at it. But yeah, I just wanted to like show this. It's kind of interesting to look at. I'll put a link for this in the description in case for some reason anyone is interested enough to like really look through this thing in depth. But anyway, I hope you guys like this story. I don't mean to sound like a totally negative guy. It's just that my like expectations versus reality like didn't really line up, and I just had like a worse time than I was expecting. But I did get some good things out of it. If you want to, go work overseas or something, I would encourage you to do that. Don't let me detract from your dreams to go and do that. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video and you like this content, please like and subscribe. If you think you know anyone who might find it interesting, who wants to go to Japan or anything like that, just if you could share it with them, that would be awesome and totally help me. But yeah, I appreciate you guys a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
米軍基地で働くのは本当に最悪だった。おすすめではないんです。